Greetings, everyone. This is Light of Tabor, and I'm your host, Mark Rattel. Today, we're going to be doing a reading from one of my all-time favorite books. This book's very special to me. We've already done a reading from chapters 1 and 2, and I got a request from one of my viewers, Daniel Van Orden, to read another chapter. And the book is The Gurus, the Young Men, and Elder Paisios, aka Saint Paisios, since he's been canonized. So, yeah, shout out to Daniel Van Orden and his wife. Apparently they actually liked the readings I did of chapter 1 and 2, so we're back with another reading for chapter 3. And we're going to kick it off with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Glory to you, our God, glory to you, Heavenly King, Comforter, the Spirit of truth, who are present in all places, filling all things. Treasury of goodness and giver of life, come and abide in us. Cleanse us from every stain of sin and save our souls, O gracious Lord. Holy God, holy mighty, holy immortal, have mercy on us. Holy God, holy mighty, holy immortal, have mercy on us. Holy God, holy mighty, holy immortal, have mercy on us. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, both now and forever, and unto the ages of ages. Amen. All right, guys, well, let's kick it off. Let's get right into it. Chapter 3. This is titled, On the Brink Between Two Spiritual Traditions. My meeting with Swami Yogamadgananda. During this period in my life, I was open to a variety of influences. On one hand, the prayers of the elder had a powerful effect on me, filling my disturbed soul with peace, providing it with an oasis of joy in my desert of pain, and granting me clarity and calmness in the jungle of my thoughts. Indeed, I could feel his prayers in the evening while I slept, and during the day as I walked through the city. They comforted me, strengthened me, and gradually gave me the hope to pull away from a life of self-destruction. On the other hand, I didn't give up my evil habits, which over the years had become passions, spreading strong roots into the depths of my soul and pulling me head first wherever they wished. I was trying to fill the emptiness in my life with material goods and philosophical theories, but the emptiness continued to expand, only increasing my anguish. My mind labored feverishly in order to find answers that would open a way out. I read many books and thought a great deal. I examined various philosophical systems and viewpoints. I turned to music and art, but to no avail. I found no solution, no way out. The elder showed me much that was great and wonderful. He didn't merely say a lot of words. He granted me experiences that taught me lessons of great importance and value. When his soul touched my soul, his fervent yet sweet-tempered love moved him to grant me his own spiritual eyes so that I would be able to see, and his own heart so that I would be able to feel. In this way, the thick cloud of ignorance that encircled me began to open up so that I could perceive the world's mysterious depth and richness. Life became meaningful without wounding me the way pleasure did. The knowledge that this other world exists was a different form of pleasure, a pleasure that never ended, but that became continuously deeper and more intense. And when this spiritual pleasure withdrew, it left joy, not suffering, in its stead. Even now, in spite of all the changes in my life, whenever I behold the clouds, the birds, the sun, the trees, the animals, the sea, and my fellow man, I continue to feel as though I were enveloped in a mystery. And the greatest mystery, and that closest at hand, is my own self, a wondrous and unmapped world hidden within my soul. I felt it was important to come to know this world, and I greatly desired to do so. I felt as though there were another hidden and invisible power that ruled and watched over my soul. At that time, however, I was intellectually a rebel and wanted to escape from this power. I was exposed to other influences, quite different from the influence of the elder, on account of loose living. Also, my interest in the occult, esotericism, white magic, yoga, Zen Buddhism, and related topics had hardly waned. I did not have a clear-cut opinion on these subjects. They seemed to be notable and encouraging possibilities that could make life easier and uncover its hidden potential. I believed their impressive promises in spite of the elder's warnings. He told me, "Look here, my child. There are two powers in this world, God and the devil. Everything depends on who you're connected with. I'm with God. I'm with Christ. Who are they with? Satan has power too. He can work miracles of deception. He was an archangel. and he still has an archangel's power, because the gifts of God are irrevocable. It was out of pride, the elder said, by the misuse of his God-given free will, that Lucifer became twisted and fell from heaven. And in this fall, his light became darkness, and he became the original inventor of evil and falsehood. The devil hates man, not only because man is called to occupy a place near the throne of God, but also because hate is the response that wells forth from his being when he looks at any creature. He wages a war to separate men from God, using every ploy, lie, delusion, guile, thought, and deed that can remove them from the light. There are people who have entered his service, some even knowingly, and through whom he works his false wonders. I listened to all of this, but I didn't believe it. On the other hand, I couldn't quite reject it. The elder was so good and sweet that I couldn't question his character. I had seen so many miracles, so many gifts, so much knowledge, and so much holiness in him, that I couldn't just disregard his views. So I remained on the fence. Others were of the opinion that all faiths are basically the same. All religions lead to the same God, and all pathways terminate at the same place. It was only natural, of course, that each person would put effort into advertising his own shop. The yogis said that yoga was the highest path and found fault with other paths. The Masons had something to say about everyone else, so that they ultimately came off as the best and the wisest. Those involved with white magic claimed that their path was more suitable for the psychological makeup of the Western man, yoga being more suitable for Easterners, and so on. There was one point, however, on which they all seemed to be in agreement, that the church was a dead, fossilized institution for the unintelligent, only to be pitied, lacking in knowledge, power, and life. Once I went for a walk in the forest near Thessaloniki in order to assuage my pain. I put my thoughts in order and reached some conclusion about everything that was happening to me. I had been lying down for a while on the pine needles when suddenly something took hold of me so violently that I completely lost contact with my surroundings. I could neither see nor hear nor feel anything in the forest. I couldn't tell whether my eyes were open or shut. And then I saw an image, although I couldn't tell whether it was in front of me or simply in my mind's eye. It was of a woman with a beautiful face and long dark hair, wearing a simple brown robe. In the place of her eyes were two silver fish the size of a pair of glasses. She was impressive and very attractive. She then departed from my field of vision as suddenly as she had entered it. I sat where I was and thought about what I had just seen. It didn't upset me because I realized it was just a message from the local ashram I would occasionally visit. A few days earlier, walking along one of the main roads of the city, I had felt as though someone were trying to entice me to visit there. I attributed my awakened desire to Swami Sivamurti, the Swamiji, which is how they referred to the highest authority at the ashram, but I didn't heed this invitation. In fact, it irritated me, because I could tell that this desire was implanted from outside of me. This time, however, it was so intense that I decided to make a visit for curiosity's sake. I didn't mull over the subject at length. I decided I would get to the end of the matter once and for all. A few days later, on a sunny day that dried out the grass, I drove my car up to the suburban mansion in which the ashram was located. In the inner courtyard, the Swamiji was sitting with another Swami, an Indian. This visitor from abroad was a beautiful woman with dark complexion and short hair, a very spiritually advanced Swami named Yogamagananda. The rest of the residents of the ashram were standing at a distance, waiting for an opportunity to meet and speak with her. I got along with people easily, and I could be very carefree if I wanted to. I don't know what came over me, but I jokingly called out to her, "I was searching for you in heaven, but I have found you on earth." The Indian woman leaned over and in English asked the Swamiji, Sivamurti, what I had said. The Swamiji explained that when I came up to the villa, I had been looking for her. Now, I neither liked nor disliked the Swamiji. I recall that the first time I had laid eyes on her, after waiting in the ashram just for this purpose, I saw through her mystique. I thought it was ridiculous the way the crowd of young people waited so impatiently for her to come out of her room. All of a sudden, she majestically came forth, like a queen emerging from her royal chambers, in order to bestow gifts and favors upon her adoring subjects. A need for people to admire her seemed to be behind this second-rate theatrical performance, which I would see repeated on subsequent visits. She briefly glanced at me, but I refused to play the role of an admirer that both she and others expected me to. I looked at them for a moment and then went back to minding my own business. I was disappointed, though I knew I had no reason to assume that all gurus shared the Swamiji's faults. I also remember another time when I was offered the singular honor of driving the Swamiji to the airport in my car so that I could have the rare opportunity to be helped by the spiritual aura of a great yogi. Quote unquote. End quote. I found an excuse to refuse because I did not want to accept the role being offered me, that of the admiring disciple who is expected to offer his services for the honor of being in the Swamiji's presence. Rather, I saw that it was part of an ugly power game she was playing in order to control those around her, and I did not wish to be responsible for participating in it. Indeed, the only reason I went to the ashram so many times was to acquire knowledge and learn about the Hindu perspective. I sat next to them in a relaxed manner as among equals, since I was not bound by a student-teacher relationship. Strangely enough, I didn't strike up a conversation with Sivamurti, but with the Indian woman, Swami Yogamananda. Swami Sivamurti limited herself to translating when we were having difficulty communicating in English. Swami Yogamananda and I spoke at such length that those around us peered at us with a mixture of jealousy and curiosity. Apparently, the Indian yogi had considered my greeting to be significant. We spoke about many subjects, including the question of who I truly was, what was my nature, what were my capacities, how should I live. We spoke also about the world at large, Elder Paisios, and my vision in the forest. When I described the vision, she smiled at me meaningfully. She told me, "The time has come for you to find your own guru." I had such questions from the age of 5. "How is it possible for a child to have such questions?" I replied. "From my previous lives," she answered. This was an impressive answer. At the time, the Christian view espoused by the elder and the other monks flashed through my mind. They taught that there are no previous lives. At conception, a new person is created, and after death, the body decomposes while the soul remains near God and aware of its existence, until the resurrection of the dead, when we will all receive back our bodies. Then the bodies of those who are saved will be like the resurrected body of Jesus Christ, spiritual, glorious, eternal, incorrupt, and no longer subject to sickness, hunger, thirst, or the need for sleep. They will have dominion over the material world and its physical laws, as did the body of Christ after it was quickened in the resurrection, passing through the doors and ascending into heaven. By the power of God and through the proper use of their free will, the saved will become gods by grace. Lowercase g, gods. That's theosis. Later, when I once asked the elder about the transmigration of the souls, he told me, "Look here, this is one of the devil's biggest traps. Someone who believes in it says, 'Oh well, it doesn't matter if I pull it off in this life, I'll succeed in the next one.' So he gets lax spiritually. But the devil knows that there won't be a next time. That schemer thinks, 'Sit still and let me get my hands on you just once, and we'll see what happens afterwards.'" The elder then looked at me and said, "Now write that down. Yes, write that down." I then asked Swami, "Why do the monks say that you are on the devil's side?" "They are ignorant, because they are at a lower level." "No," I responded, "that's not true. They are not at a lower level. They know many things." I had the elder in mind. I had recalled the many miracles he had worked, such as the time he had taken by the hand a man paralyzed from birth and enabled him to walk around the room. The elder had told me many details of my own life that I had forgotten. He would feed wild bears by hand, for nature was obedient to him. He saw and conversed with saints, angels, and the Virgin Mary. He could be in a distant location without having traveled. Nevertheless, miracles were not the reason that I cried out with a resounding no. My objection was based on something deeper and more hidden. The elder was a God-bearer. He had God in his heart and in his soul. Each of us could feel the grace of God in the elder's presence. Christ's words were incarnate in the elder's life. If a man love me, he will keep my words, and my Father will love him, and we will come unto him, and make our abode with him. God had made the elder's heart his home. The thousands of people who visited him relate their experiences of him with gratitude. Their testimonies were the elder's fruit. Truly, he that abideth in me, and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. Of course, at the time I would hardly have been able to express this deep sense with the clarity I have just now. Nevertheless, this knowledge was a part of me, and it made me object to what she said. She continued, "Neither God nor the devil exists. We are already further advanced, beyond good and evil. After all, what is evil? What is sin?" I answered, "When you harm, hurt, upset, or kill someone, or even your own self, you are committing a sin." Our conversation ended with this disagreement. We arose and went our separate ways. I stayed around the ashram for a little, though, because I had found some acquaintances there. At one point, when I was alone, Yogamagananda approached me and asked me directly, "And whose side are you on?" I playfully answered, "I am beyond good and evil." But she became serious, stared at me with an intense look, and continued, "If only God and the devil existed, who would you side with?" I replied, "The monks say that you are with the devil." "So what?" she said. Did she mean, so what if the monks say that? Or, so what if we're with the devil? The way that she put it made it more than a question. It was an invitation. And though her words were few and ambiguous, her posture, her countenance, and the tone of her voice were eloquent and clear as a bell. By nonverbal means, I felt her saying, "We're with the devil, and we're having a great time. Come along for the ride. What are you afraid of?" I felt physically attracted to her, or perhaps I was just affected by the Tantra-related phenomenon of some kind. In any event, it seemed that, by some means unbeknownst to me, she had managed to inflame my soul, so that I had suddenly felt a rush of desire pushing me to answer, "I am with the devil." I was jolted by this unexpected attack. I struggled to use my reason to regain my balance after this overwhelming wave of desire, so powerful that it nearly washed me away. I tried to understand this extremely strange experience. Such a manifestation of power surprised me. Since she has this kind of power, I thought, I should be careful around her. So many things were happening to me at once. She stood in front of me and continued to gaze at me intensely, her countenance dominating her appearance. I managed to gain control over the irrational impulse of my soul, and did not yield to say what was so strongly fixed in my mind. So I answered, "I am with God." I wanted to continue, but her face immediately grew dark. I didn't have time to discern whether she was angry, threatening, or full of hatred, because she made an about face and left without saying another word. If she hadn't left so abruptly, I would have told her, but I like rebels. I have been a rebel all my life. Afterwards, I never saw her again. Later, I learned other facts about this Swami. From a young age, she had been a disciple of a guru, and later became one of the closest disciples of Satyananda. She gave lectures and lessons in Greece. Many considered her to be quite advanced and at a high spiritual level, a reputation she even had at the central ashram of the movement in Mungir, India, as I was able to confirm when I went there for a few months later. Silva mind control. Sometime before I got to know the elder, I had come into contact with Silva mind control, now known as the Silva method, through a book of the same title that my cousin gave me. In this book, Jose Silva, a once poor man from Mexico, claims that he has discovered a method by which one can make use of the mind's hidden potential. Putting this method into practice for oneself, he became a wealthy founder and leader of a worldwide organization whose goal is to spread this method throughout the world. Today, this organization has offices even in Greece. Its members pay for participating in seminars that are held from time to time, form groups, and try to attract younger people to the seminars. The method is based on the scientific observation that the brain generates different kinds of electromagnetic waves when one is awake, when one is in a deep sleep, and when one is between sleep and wakefulness, or in a light sleep. The waves that correspond to the state between sleep and wakefulness, generated when the brain is at the alpha level, are called alpha waves. Now, the members of the Silva method claim that the brain can perform other functions or make better use of its potential when it is at the alpha level. They teach a method by which a person can consciously descend to the alpha level at will without falling asleep by counting backwards. Supposedly, when one is at this level, he can make use of the hidden potential of his mind. All of their views are packaged in scientific terminology. At no point does one hear about yoga or Eastern religions. On the contrary, Western views on science and psychology are presented, thus attracting individuals who place great trust in scientific knowledge. One would have to enter into the organization in order to begin to suspect it's difficult to discern connections with Eastern mysticism. Only when one has become more involved with them do they begin to speak about how one can also use, for example, yoga and occult techniques in order to further one's potential. Of course, I did not realize all of this then. So when I learned that an introductory lecture on Jose Silva's method was being organized at the Center for Macedonian Studies, I was very interested in attending. I went and heard the entire presentation. It vaguely reminded me of yoga, with which I was already familiar. Through someone who had never been involved with yoga would have never suspected such a relationship. At the end of the lecture, I asked the speaker a question that had been on my mind. The human mind naturally functions in such a manner that it is found at the alpha level for only a limited period of time every 24 hours. You are suggesting that we interfere with this spontaneous natural process, attempting to alter it or replace it with another way of functioning, trying to remain at the alpha level as long as we can. But how do we know this isn't dangerous? How can we be sure that this defiance of nature will not produce some sort of imbalance or psychosomatic injury? For example, how do we know that this will not have an adverse effect on our nervous system, or even the injury does not manifest itself at once? Even if the injury does not manifest itself at once, the brain's endurance may have certain limits. What will happen if we systematically and chronically violate its normal processes? How do we know that it will withstand such stress? The teacher simply answered, "Don't be afraid. We know what we're doing." In other words, I was simply supposed to believe them and believe in their wisdom. A doctor or other scientist, I thought to myself, would have brought forward experimental proof, measurable results. He would have explained, for instance, how a certain drug or certain procedure was tested on a group for a certain length of time, how the members of the group were examined, and what were the findings in terms of positive results and the negative results. But these people did not merely lack scientific evidence based on experimentation. They were not even prepared for a scientific discussion, but were merely trying to pacify me with assurances. How much, I asked myself, can someone trust a person he doesn't know? Can he trust him with his motorcycle, his car, his home, or his bank account? Would it make sense to give him free rein over his mind, mental processes, and psychological balance? I was amazed by how many people did trust them. That year, I didn't go back to their seminars, but 2 years later, several months after my meeting with Swami Yogananda, I did return. One day, I was sitting at the Majestic, a shoreline cafe popular with students. There I met an acquaintance of mine, who told me that he was going to take part in a trance of mind. Who told me he was going to take part in the first lesson at a seminar for Silva mind control, and I decided to accept his invitation to accompany him. The seminar was held in a conference room in the Electra Palace Hotel on Aristotle Square, one of the finest hotels in Thessaloniki. It would last for 4 to 5 days, and the fee was about half of a student's monthly wages. I met the teacher and told him that I didn't have enough money, so he allowed me to attend free of charge. Why did I make a snap decision to go back after having so decisively rejected the movement before? In part, surely, just in order to have something to do, but I believe I had other motives, unknown to me at the time. For one thing, I had a desire to excel and stand out from the crowd. Mind control promised me to help me make use of my hidden potential and utilize my entire mind, in contrast to the rest of the mass of humanity. I could help others, which really meant be superior to them. In this way, then, the passions of my soul were masked by the beautiful ideas of making spiritual progress, searching for the truth, helping humanity, and so forth. Of course, these were goals to which I was genuinely attracted, but on their own they couldn't really account for my sudden change of mind. Many of us, perhaps, were also moved in some degree to participate by boredom and inner emptiness, by loneliness and a desire for belonging, and by the simple basic wish for companionship, especially with the opposite sex. The first day of the seminar went smoothly and everyone was quite pleased. At the end, I tried to meet with the teacher in private. He was a well-dressed man with a muscular physique, around 50 years old. His name was Paul, and he was a second-generation Greek-American of Cypriot origin who lived in New York. He spoke Greek well, and we took a liking to each other. Since I was reading the works of Mihail Ivanov, a practitioner of white magic, I asked him, "Do you belong to the Universal White Brotherhood?" He answered that he should think so. As our conversation proceeded, he could see that I read a great deal about yoga. So he told me that he was a yogi. That surprised me a bit, because I had never imagined seeing a yogi in a suit. He told me that he practiced Kriya Yoga, and had Paramahansa Yogananda as a guru. At present, he was working in Greece to make some money. I knew of his teacher from one of his books, which I had read when I was a university freshman, and I would have liked to have met him. We continued our conversation, and I could see that Paul was an advanced yogi. I told him how I felt as though whatever I did changed me and affected me deeply. My actions, my words, and my thoughts alter my soul. I don't know how I should live, and I don't know where I should go. It's as though I'm sculpting myself daily, but without a design, without a model, and totally at random. I shouldn't continue living my life this way, and I don't know how to live. He replied, "The next time that I come to Greece, in the spring, 6 months from now, we will spend a day together, but now I don't have enough time." "In the spring," I retorted, "I will be in India." I was surprised by my own answer. I had wanted to go to India, but had not seriously thought about it when. I was also surprised by how quickly Paul and I had become so close. I felt that Paul had influenced me in some unknown way. Today, I believe he had put me under a light hypnosis. On the second day of the seminar, I was waiting in the lounge of the hotel for the beginning of the real instruction or initiation. Now, by this time, I had come to know Father Paisios. So by experience, I had some feel as to whether something sounded Christian or not. As I sat there, I was wondering if I was doing the right thing. I thought about what Father Paisios had told me, and in my mind I begged him, "Elder, if this is evil, prevent it from taking place. Don't let it happen." Shortly thereafter, with the arrival of some girls and other participants, I completely forgot about my inner reservations. We began the seminar by loudly intoning the word Om, which Hindu teaching considers sacred, in order to purify the atmosphere from spiritual interference. The seminar proceeded, but the students who were repeating the course began to get frustrated. During the breaks, they began to voice their gripes and complaints. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I really liked Paul and didn't enjoy listening to him being criticized. As it turned out, Paul was beginning to suspect that I was the source of the difficulties. After the break, he began the next session with some jokes in order to break the tension. While he was telling jokes and walking around the room, he tested me to see how I would respond to his actions. For example, he would suddenly give me his open hand to see my reaction. I responded spontaneously and positively, grabbing his hand firmly without even thinking about it. He did 3 or 4 tests of this sort, finishing with one that I had read about in a psychology book. It was then I realized that he had doubts about me and was testing my feelings about him and the seminar. It seemed strange, because I only had good feelings in that regard. In any event, I responded quite positively to all the tests. He decided to go ahead with the initiation, but within half an hour of exercises, the returning students were again frustrated and grumbling. It didn't take long for the dissatisfaction to come up to the surface. 2 or 3 of them began to get fed up and complain openly. They defiantly asked, "If there is a spiritual shield over the seminar, is there a spiritual shield over the seminar or isn't there?" For the new students, the question was hardly comprehensible. What was a spiritual shield? What were we being shielded from? Was there some danger? Who was threatening us? And who was shielding us? The returning students minced their words in answering these questions. Nevertheless, they did stress that there was an interference making our initiation very difficult on a spiritual level. On other occasions, it had proceeded much more smoothly. In the end, the sessions were broken off for a day. Paul announced that Maria, a former student of his, would continue the instruction, since he was not able to do so personally. That's when the thought flashed through my mind. What had I asked Father Paisios to do? Didn't I pray that he would prevent the initiation from taking place if it were something bad? Maybe the elder's hand had been in the unsuccessful outcome of this last meeting. I still wasn't sure, because there could have been 1,000 other explanations. I decided to continue to go to the meetings, but I simultaneously prayed to Christ and also asked the elder to make it even more obvious in my eyes if there was something evil about the seminar. After a space of 1 day, Maria came up from Athens to lead the meetings in Paul's place. She was a pleasant woman, around 30 years old, with light brown hair. The initiation continued without any obstacles for everyone else, but I kept on encountering unexpected phenomena. For example, during a certain exercise, we all had our eyes closed and had supposedly descended deep into the alpha level. We were supposed to picture in our minds images that Maria would name. Maria had selected these images in advance and was directing us from one to the next without any pause, so that they resembled a movie playing in our minds. Suddenly, while I was smoothly performing this exercise, it was as though an interruption jammed the film. Instead of seeing what Maria was describing, I saw a demon with an ugly, cunning face, complete with tail and horns. He didn't appear to be threatening or hostile. On the contrary, he was joking around and seemed to be well disposed towards me. This apparition took me by surprise. I wondered what this creature was and what he wanted from me. The interruption lasted only a few seconds, and afterwards, the exercise proceeded normally. No one else was aware of what happened to me. During the rest of the exercises, I saw the demon many times in various ways. Finally, I decided to ask Maria about it. When the instruction for the day was over, I went and sat in the corner of the lounge where I described to her what had happened and asked for her opinion. She carefully listened to what I had to say without being surprised or making objections. She accepted what had happened and told me that such phenomena occur in the spiritual realm. She told me that, though she practiced yoga from time to time, she found certain errors in it and considered it to be an inferior path to the one she followed. The mind control seminar, she told me, was for beginners. If someone wanted to advance, he would have to find a personal teacher. She then began to speak to me about her own teacher, who lived in France. I gathered that he was a follower of yogic. She said that he helped her a great deal, although she had to pay him a considerable sum. She worked at least 12 hours a day, apart from the seminar, and would meet her teacher 4 or 5 times a year and give him nearly all of her money. She considered her connection with him to be worth such a prize. Now, I could see that Maria was a bright young woman. She had a law degree and had traveled to many places, and I couldn't understand why she would give her teacher all of her annual earnings. I also wondered what kind of spiritual teacher would drive such a hard bargain. I thought of Christ, whom I also considered to have been a spiritual teacher, telling the first disciples, Freely ye have received, freely give. And I thought of Elder Paisios, who followed this teaching to the letter. In any event, having heard her views and suggestions, again I posed the question, why did the demon appear in my mind? She smiled kindly and said, apparently the polarity of your cell attracts him. In other words, she maintained that I was somehow organically related to the devil at a cellular level. I found such an explanation astonishing. So why did the demons appear to Christ? I asked her. She started to squirm and said, you ask difficult questions. And with that, she left. I surmised from her comments that she had two aims: to bring me into contact with her teacher and to convince me that I had a connection with the demon I had seen, and a connection I should look at in a positive light. The seminar was nearly over and had raised a number of questions. I wondered whether Maria's exposition to me of her views and the manifestation of the demon were not, in fact, the answer to my prayerful request to Father Paisios to make it more obvious in my eyes if there was something evil about the seminar. Indeed, a short time afterwards, I asked the elder if he had heard my prayer and extended to me a helping hand. He smiled and lovingly said, would I leave someone like you without any help? We had supposedly gained certain abilities from these meetings, such as the ability to diagnose someone's illness at a distance. We had, they told us, gained the capability of healing the sick. We had supposedly learned to foretell the future using a crystal ball. Yes, a crystal ball, like the one used by a cartoon witch, was part of the bill of goods they were selling to us. We supposedly had the ability to create our own future by influencing events to our advantage, such that we might, for example, find a good job or become rich, as did Jose Silva. We also supposedly had the ability to avert undesirable events such as car accidents. When we were practicing with our teachers, the method seemed to work, but it's hard to always establish claims like this with certainty. After all, anyone can provide his own rationale for what takes place around him. So I decided to test the method on my own. We're going to have to do this in two parts because this is getting to about 40 minutes. But we'll wrap up this section and then we'll do a second part to this to finish up chapter 2. On my own, I would use it to make an improbable situation arise. There was a girl whom I had split up with about a year before who disliked me so much that she painstakingly avoided coming into contact with me. I had tried in vain to meet her on many occasions, but in that whole year I hadn't been able to see her at all. She was absolutely inflexible, so I had decided to use the method for about a week in order to make her try to find me, without my even lifting my little finger. After 10 days, this girl who had previously not even wanted to lay eyes on me was looking for excuses and opportunities through various acquaintances to approach me. I didn't make the slightest advance. On the contrary, I had made myself more distant. Finally, an invitation to visit her at her home arrived by means of a common acquaintance. I didn't respond. In a short while, the invitation was made again. Again, I didn't respond. Finally, she herself called me on the phone, asking me to meet her, purportedly because she had something to give me. What had taken place was astounding. I couldn't help but wonder whether this method was in fact akin to witchcraft in the back of my mind. I asked if demons were, in fact, the entities arranging these situations on my behalf. Maybe the monks were actually right when they said that people in such organizations work with the devil. I couldn't believe that I had been given such power because these entities loved me, and I didn't know what I would have to pay in exchange. Who was really serving whom? At a healing meeting that I had arranged, I also discovered an illness that my father had. When I went and asked him about it, he confirmed everything I had predicted. There were many other such incidents, too many to recount. I found these powers to be quite scary, and in the end, I would completely refrain from using the method. And that's where we're going to wrap it up for today. We will continue the rest of this on another day. Let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah, we wouldn't have been able to do that today. 14, 15 more pages to get through in chapter 3. So we'll definitely wrap that up on another video. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, go ahead and give it a like. Go ahead and drop some comments below to help with the algorithms, and feel free to share it around if you feel inclined to. That also helps a lot. So without further ado, God bless everybody. I hope you have a beautiful day and you're having a beautiful time during the holidays with your family.